morning, dear learners. Welcome to teaching learning session of sociology. In today's lecture, we'll discuss about the sociologist in India. In our previous lectures, we discussed about the Western sociologist, we discussed about Durkheim, we discussed about Karl Marx and Max Weber. Today, we'll discuss about the sociologist in India, and in this, we'll start with Indian sociologist G.S. Ghurye. G.S. Ghurye is known as father of Indian sociology. G.S. Ghurye was an ethnographer of tribes and castes, but he also wrote extensively on other topics. His basic work is on caste and tribes. In his writings, Ghurye emphasized on integrations. Ghurye is known as armchair sociologist. Ghurye was a Sanskritist by training before he entered the discipline of sociology. His work on Vedic India, written in the later year, was an example of his interest in Sanskrit work. Biographical sketch of G.S. Ghurye. The biographical sketch of G.S. Ghurye is based on his own book, I and Other Explorations, published in 1973. G.S. Ghurye, Govind Sadashiv Ghurye, was born on 12 December 1893 in a small town called Malwan on the west coast of India. Malwan is 200 miles away from Bombay, now Mumbai. He belonged to a fairly prosperous Brahmin family. Ghurye was one of the 4 children of his parents, and he joined the school in Malwan. But because of certain financial crisis, his father joined the job, and that's how he came to this profession. His mother tongue was Marathi, and his early schooling was in Marathi. But the knowledge of Sanskrit was there in family, and his grandfather knew Sanskrit. He too started learning Sanskrit, and this helped Ghurye a lot. The religious atmosphere of the family and its reputation, learning had a deep influence on G.S. Ghurye. He grew up learning English and received modern education, but his roots in Hindu culture and traditions were very deep. He was sent to Junagadh to complete his matriculation. He became the student of the Bahauddin College in 1912. Here he became very proficient in Sanskrit. Later on, he joined Bombay University. Ghurye had obtained first position in his college. In the university, he secured 4th position. In 1916, when G.S. Ghurye had completed his BA examination and stood first in it, he was married to a girl of a fairly rich family of Vengurla, of his own subcaste. His parents named his wife Rukmani after the marriage, as per the practice amongst the Maharashtrians. But Ghurye reverted back to calling her Sajubai, which was her original name, when they established their own household in 1923. Why he started calling her Sajubai? Because he was against the practice of changing personal name of a girl after marriage. For his BA result, he received Bhau Daji Prize, named after a great Indologist Bhau Daji, who was one of the first physicians of Mumbai trained in the Western system of medicine. G.S. Ghure had secured 74% marks in Sanskrit in his college. Sadashiv Ghure was appointed a fellow of the college and completed his MA degree. The languages he chose in his MA course were English, Sanskrit, and later he took Pali. He also did a course which was newly introduced in the university on comparative theology. He got first class in MA also. So he was very intelligent and very interested in studies. He was very good academically. He was awarded the Chancellor Gold Medal, a topmost honor in the whole university. His success was unique in the history of the university because nobody before him had ever got the first class in MA with Sanskrit. After the completion of his MA, he applied for a scholarship to go abroad for studies in sociology, which the Bombay University had advertised earlier. He was asked to meet Professor Patrick Geddes of sociology in Bombay University. Patrick Geddes was the head of the sociology department from 1918 till 1923-24. We discussed about the Patrick Geddes on our last lecture. He extensively worked on urban sociology, and he was the one who started the sociology as an academic discipline in India. Because of his efforts, Bombay University is the first university which offered sociology as a subject in universities. During his interaction with Professor Geddes, he wrote an essay on Bombay as an urban center, which was highly appreciated by Patrick. This enabled Ghure to get the foreign study scholarship. Ghure went to England and he became the student of L.T. Hobhouse. Besides many other people, he met Dr. A.C. Hudden, who was a world-famous ethnologist studying pre-literate culture. It was Hudden who introduced Ghure to Dr. W.H.R. Rivers, who influenced Ghure, or Ghure was influenced by W.H.R. River. River was at the pinnacle of his intellectual glory and was founder of Cambridge School of Psychology. Rivers later came to India and studied a polyandrous tribe called Toda of Nilgiri Hills. So River studied the Toda tribe of Nilgiri Hills. At this time, Ghure wrote several articles in sociology and got them published in the journals of Royal Anthropological Institute, in the journal and Anthropos. Both journals are reputed journals of sociology. He wrote his most important work, Caste and Race in India, during 1930s. It is one of the most important work of Ghure, that is Caste and Race in India. He extensively worked on the caste system of India, and he wrote about the caste and race in India in 1930. And he was awarded the degree of PhD from Cambridge University. He came back to India after W.H.R. River's death. So from Bombay University, he completed his graduation, he completed his post-graduation, and then went to England for further study, where he met W.H.R. River, Hudden, and Hobhouse, and he got his PhD degree from Cambridge University, and then he came back to India. Then he started working in Calcutta, and he worked in Calcutta for 7 months on scholarship which he received from the Bombay University. After 7 months, G.S. Ghure and K.P. Chattopadhyay of Calcutta University got appointment as a reader in sociology at Bombay University in 1924. He got this appointment due to great respect and recognition given to him by late Dr. W.H.R. River. G.S. Ghure joined the Bombay Asiatic Society as a member in the same year. He guided several students under him. Some of his students are now famous sociologists. They made significant contribution to the growth of sociology and social anthropology in India. G.S. Ghure was made a professor in sociology in 1934, 10 years after he joined Bombay University as a reader and the head of the Department of Sociology. He was elected the president of Anthropological section of Indian Science Congress in 1934. In 1934, he became the Department of Head of the Sociology in Bombay University, and in the same year, he became the president of Anthropological section of Indian Science Congress. In the same year, he was elected as the nominee of Royal Asiatic Society by the Managing Committee of Bombay Branch. In 1942, he became the president of Bombay. G.S. Ghure, Bombay, and in 1924, he became the president of Bombay Anthropological Society. and continued to hold this position till 1948. He wrote several books and articles, and his knowledge of Sanskrit enabled him to study the religious scriptures in the context of Indian society. Sanskrit helped him a lot because of the knowledge of Sanskrit, he was able to read the scriptures of religious Indian text, and it helped in his research. He studied castes and tribes, rural urbanization, about the Indian sadhus, and Indian customs. During his lifetime, he won several top honors accorded to any intellectual in India. He became not only a nationally but internationally known sociologist of India. He died in 1984. Central ideas of G.S. Ghurye. G.S. Ghurye's contribution to Indian sociology were mainly in the areas of ethnography of caste and tribes, rural urbanization, religious phenomena, social tension, and Indian art. He worked extensively on these ideas. Caste and tribes. He worked on the rural urbanization in India. He worked on the religious phenomenon in India, social tensions, and he wrote extensively about Indian art. Now let us discuss his central ideas one by one. Caste and kinship in India. In early 1930s, G.S. Ghurye published a group, Caste and Race in India, which still is an important source book on Indian castes. He described about Indian castes and kinship in detail in 1900 in his book Caste and Race in India, which is published in 1930. He examined the caste system from historical, comparative, and integrative perspective. So he studied caste system on three perspectives. First is historical perspective. Second is comparative. He compared different castes, and then the integrative perspective of the caste. Ghurye describes caste as a form of social organization that is unique to Indian civilization, which presents a clear contrast to social grouping in the rest of the world. So, as per Ghurye, caste is unique to India. It is a social organization, and it is unique to Indian civilization. And he compared caste with other social grouping in the rest of world. In rest of world, if there is no caste but there is social grouping, people people have been divided on the basis of their groups. Social grouping is there. Hindu society is divided into grouping known as caste, with a varying degree of respectability and social interaction. Even in India, the caste system is found in Hindus only. And there is a variability in degree of respectability and social interaction. There are certain rules framed for each and every caste. There is a variability in the respectability of the caste. Gure brought out the six feature of caste systems. First is segmental division of society. He brought out the six main features of the caste system, and the first one is segmental division of society. Segmental division is society is divided into segment, and the caste society comprises of heterogeneous group, and caste is a heterogeneous group with a distinct life of their own, and the membership is determined not by selection but by birth. See, caste is an heterogeneous group. Heterogeneous means different. Obviously, there is a difference in the caste, so it is a heterogeneous group, and the lifestyle of each group is different. These heterogeneous groups have distinct lifestyle of their own. The third important point is the caste is or the membership of someone who belongs to which caste is determined by birth, not by selection. No one can select his or her own caste. It is by birth. The membership of the caste is determined by birth, not by selection. So, it is a heterogeneous group. Caste is a heterogeneous group. Lifestyle of each caste is different, and the membership of the caste is determined. The membership of this organization, caste is a social organization according to Gure. The membership of this social organization is determined by the birth, not by the selection. Caste are small and complete social world in themselves. So caste itself is a world. Caste is a world in itself, a small world in itself, marked off definitely from one another through subsisting within the larger society. Within the larger society, these castes are marked as a different social world. Second feature, first was the segmental division of society. The second feature of the caste is hierarchy. One of the principal characteristics of caste society is hierarchy of groups. There is a hierarchy. This implies a definite scheme of social precedence amongst the caste, with Brahman at the head of the hierarchy. One of the principal characteristics of caste society is hierarchy. There is a hierarchy, and in this hierarchy, Brahmins are at the top, and other precedes. The third principle is restriction on feeding and social intercourse. Even this 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 is defined which caste will how what is there is a rule for the social intercourse as well as for the feeding. There are minute rules pertaining to what sort of food or drinks can be accepted by the person and from what caste. While lower castes have no problems in accepting the good food from any higher caste, the Brahmins and other castes did not accept the food or water from other castes that stood lower than itself in the social scale. Even the minute rules related to intercourse and feedings were there. It has been described that who will accept what from whom. Gure mentions about the theory of pollution communicated by some castes to the member of the higher ones. The fourth is civil and religious disabilities and privileges of different sections. Gure noted that one of the most obvious markers of civil privileges and disabilities that prevailed all over India was the segregation of individual castes or group of castes in a village. Southern India stands out as the most rigid in the matter of rules pertaining to ceremonial purity and untouchability. So there was civil and religious disabilities, privileges of the different section. A certain section of the society was not allowed to perform certain rituals or enter the temples. And Gure observed that it prevailed all over India. And and there was a segregation of individual castes or group of castes in villages. Even in villages, there is a segregation of groups or castes, and people live in a group with their castes only, and especially in southern India. Southern India stands out as the most rigid in the matter of rules pertaining to ceremonial purity and untouchability. In southern India, certain parts of the town or villages were inaccessible to certain castes. Even the type of houses that were to built and the material that were to be used for the constructions were prescribed for the lower castes. And the fifth one is lack of unrestricted choices of occupation. The occupation have been fixed by heredity. Generally, the castes were not allowed to change their traditional occupations. Occupation is fixed by heredity. One inherits the occupation. All caste people maintain their supremacy and secrecy in their jobs and do not allow other castes to join in. The upper caste people, like Brahmins, are free to opt for study of religious books, while this cannot be done by other classes. The lower natured jobs like sweeping, bathroom sweepings, washing clothes, etc., have been kept in the untouchable category. Restriction on food, drink, and social interactions were areas in which some rules have been imposed upon all castes people. Sixth is restriction of marriage. Caste group follows the principle of endogamy. This means that the caste group marry within their own group. Marrying an outside the caste group is strongly condemned. So these are the six features, very important features about the caste. First, the first feature of the caste system as per Gure is the segmental division of society. There is a segmental division of the society, that is the so caste is comprises of heterogeneous group, right? They have different, these groups have different lifestyles, and the membership of the caste is determined by birth, not by choice, right? And this caste is a small world in itself. The second feature is hierarchy. There is a well defined hierarchy of the caste, and in this hierarchy Brahmins comes at the top, right? And then there is a restriction on feeding and social intercourse. There are minute rules pertaining to what sort of food or drink one can consume or accept from the another. There are rules related to the feeding and social intercourse. No one can break these rules, right? Then next is civil and religious disabilities and privileges to different section, that this certain section of the society were not allowed to access certain areas, right? Like untouchables were not allowed to enter the temples or take water from the wells of Brahmins, from the wells of Brahmins or other castes. So civil and religious disabilities were there, especially in southern India. They were more strong about it. And then the lack of unrestricted choices of occupation. That occupation is a kind of a heredity. One inherits the choice, the occupations, right? So there was a restrictions on the choice of occupation. One has to performer, one is not allowed to change the traditional occupation, right? And even in this the upper caste people opt for the good works, and some works which are categorized as untouchable have been left for the lower castes. Then a sixth is restrictions on marriage. Even there are certain rules for the marriage, that people will marry within their own group, right? They will follow the principle of endogamy, and marrying outside the group is not at all allowed, right? Then he made a comparative study of kinship in Indo-European culture. It was a caste. He studied about the caste, and after this, he made a comparative study of kinship in Indian Indo-European culture. In his studies of kinship and caste, Gure emphasized 2 points. The kin and caste network of India had parallel in some other countries. Second is the kinship and caste in India served as an integrative framework. There were three perspectives. One of the perspective was the integration, right? So when he compared the kinship of Indo-European culture, so according to Gure, the kinship and caste in India served an integrative framework. The evolution of Indian society was based on the integration of diverse racial and ethnic groups through these networks. The Gotra and Channa were kin categories of Indo-European languages, which systemized the rank and status of people. Gotra systemized the rank and the status of the people, and these categories, these Gotras, were derived from the name of sages of the past. These sages were real. They were real founder of the Gotras. In India, descent has not always been traced to the blood tie. The lineage were often based on the spiritual descent from the sages of the past. Outside the kinship, we might notice the Guru Shishya relationship, which is also based on the spiritual descent. So in India, descent was not traced to the blood tie, but it is based on the spiritual ties, and these spiritual ties with the sages of the past, like Kashyap. Outside the kinship, we might notice Guru Shishya relationship, which is also based on the spiritual essence. Likewise, caste and subcaste integrated people into ranked order based on the norms of purity and pollution. Caste and subcaste integrates the people, and caste and subcaste ranked people on the basis of purity and pollution. The rule of endogamy and commensality, which marked off caste from each other, were in fact integrative instrument to organize them into totality or collectivity. Endogamy is marrying within own group. It marked off caste from each other. And this is an integrative instrument to organize them into totality or collectivity. The Hindu religion provided the conceptual and ritualistic guidelines for this integration. The Brahmin in India played a key role in legitimizing the caste rank and order through their interpretation of Dharam Shastra. So, Brahmins played an important role in legitimizing the caste system because they interpreted the Dharam Shastra, and that depends how they interpreted the caste system. Assimilations of scheduled caste. According to Gure, the term scheduled presented the fifth order in the fourfold society of Hindu theory of caste. Gure states that the idea of purity, whether occupational or ceremonial, were a factor in the genesis of caste and are responsible for the practice of untouchability. This purity is responsible for untouchability. Purity, purity related to ceremonies, or purity related to occupation. This is responsible for practice of untouchability, and Ghure referred to Namashudras of West Bengal, whose social position was very low, accounting for 320,000 according to 1951 census. He was of the view that untouchable classes should be assimilated into Hindu society. They should be assimilated into Hindu society. By assimilation, Gure meant that transformation of the status of untouchables. How can we assimilate untouchables into Hindus? By transforming their status, by transforming the status of untouchables. How we can transform the status of untouchables? How this is possible? We can do it by removing individuals' disability that hampers a better and cleaner living. First is remove individuals' disabilities that hampers a better and cleaner living, because there are rules. According to caste system, occupation is inherited. Second, enabling these classes to cultivate cleaner and moral mode of life. Third is to encounter those of other section to have freer social interaction with these people. And fourth is to weaken and eradicate the exclusive spirit of caste. How can we assimilate untouchable? First is by removing their disabilities and hamper for better and cleaner living, by providing these classes to cultivate cleaner and moral mode of life. And third is that other sections of this society should have free and social interaction with these people. There should be no hesitation. And fourth is that to weaken and eradicate the exclusive spirit of caste. Ghure wanted this revolutionary task to be achieved through the establishment of central administrative organization and provincial and local communities to adjudicate the disputes that arise between the ritually pure and impure caste. So he wanted this to be done through a central administrative organization. He also suggested providing modern technology, training, and employment to untouchable classes in order to facilitate their assimilation into Hindu society. He did not think that reservation was necessary, since it tends to perpetuate the distinction based on the birth. According to Ghare, reservation is not at all required, it is not as necessary, because this reservation perpetuates the distinction based on the birth. He opposed reservation since it would lead to the inter-caste problems and unleash caste patriotism. He responded great faith in the noble constitution of India that promised equality to all, including untouchability. He had a faith in Indian constitution. Indian constitution promised equality to all. But Gure, according to Gure, reservation was not important because on the basis of birth, because it perpetuates the distinction between the birth and it gives rise to the tension between the caste and it unleashes the caste patriotism. New role of caste in India. Indian caste had fostered voluntary association for furtherance of education and reformist aim. Nadar, Reddy, Kamas of South India, Saraswat Brahmins of Maharashtra, Vaishyas and Kayastha of North India, to mention only few, founded caste association. Now, India has had fostered the voluntary association of the castes, right? Like association of Saraswat Brahmins, association of Nadars, association of Reddys, right? Vaishyas association and the Kayas association. They founded caste associations. Gure presumed that in future they would give rise to the political cognizance based on the caste ties. Gure presumed it that these caste-based association they would give rise to the political cognizance. And in the post-independent India, the caste association have been quite vocal in getting political favor to their members. So, Gure was against the caste. He always wanted that this caste system should be abolished, right? As the constitution provides equality, right? And Gure presumed that this caste will create a problem later on, and Gure referred to the various agitations of backward classes for better privileges. These struggles seemed to be undermining the integrity of Indian society. That the struggle on the basis of caste, this struggle undermines the integrity of Indian society. This caste, this integrates the India. Unity in diversity. But because of this association on the basis of caste, as per Gure, and their struggle for their political will and wishes, these struggles seems to be undermining the integrity of Indian society, because everyone is fighting for their own caste rather than thinking about India as a state. The caste system was becoming pluralist in the sense that each caste was in competition or conflict with other for bigger share of nation's wealth. Rather than thinking about nation's integrity, they conflict or they compete with each other for their bigger share of the nation's wealth on the basis of caste. As per Gure, this scramble for privileges was damaging the unity of society. That's what I explained to you. Study of tribes in India. After caste, he studied about the tribes. Gure's work on the tribe were general as well as specific. He wrote general work on scheduled tribe in which he dwelt with historical, administrative, and social dimension of Indian tribes. He described about the historical, administrative, and the social dimensions of the Indian tribes generally. He also wrote on the specific tribe, such as Kolis of Maharashtra. He studied the Kolis tribe of Maharashtra. Gure was of the view that Indian tribes were like backward Hindus. So Gure called tribes as backward Hindus. Their backwardness was due to their imperfect integration into Hindu society. Why he called them the backward Hindu? Because of their imperfect integration into Hindu society. They were not integrated into the Hindu society. The Santhals, Bhils, Gonds, who live in the south central India are example of this. For Ghure, the incorporation of Hindu values and norms into tribal life was a positive development. He called them backward Hindu, and he considered the incorporation of these tribes into Hindu as a positive development. With increasing contact with the Hindu social group, the tribes had slowly absorbed education and certain Hindu values and style of life. Why he considered this? Why he considered it a positive development? Because when these tribes are incorporated into Hindus, they adopted the Hindu values and the norms, right? And they had slowly absorbed the certain Hindu values and the style of life. Like in Hindus, eating non-veg is not allowed normally, right? Drinking is not allowed, and obviously, when these things are not allowed, um, it enhances the lifestyle. So, as per Gure, it enhances the lifestyle of the tribes. It is a positive development uh, for India as well as for the Hindus and the tribes. Next is rural urbanization in India. His work about the rural urbanization in India. Rural urbanization showed the indigenous source of urbanism. The growth of metropolitan centers during colonial times altered the Indian urban life. Although there were, before the Britishers, there were cities in India, but after the entry of the Britishers, the growth of metropolitan centers altered the Indian urban life. The towns and cities were no longer the outlets for the agriculture produce and handicrafts, but they became the major manufacturing center which used rural hinterland for producing raw material and turn it into a market for selling industrial product. Before the colonial period, cities were there and they were the outlet for the agriculture produce and the handicrafts. But after the colonial growth, after the entry of the Britishers, these metropolitans became the major manufacturing centers. And they use the produce of the rural raw material. They use the rural raw material and turn that raw material into product. And these metropolitan cities are the market for selling of industrial product. Thus, metropolis come to dominate the village economy. In contrast to the previous pattern, now the urbanization has started making inroads into rural hinterland. Religious beliefs and practices in India. His central idea about the religious belief and practices. Gure argued that the religious consciousness in ancient India, Egypt, and Babylon was centered around temples. He worked on the role of gods in Indian religion. Gure traced the rise of major deities such as Shiva, Vishnu, and Durga to the need to integrate local or sub-regional belief into a macro level system of worship. So, as per Gure, in his work, he depicted that this religion integrates the local or sub-regional belief into a macro level system of worship, and the diverse ethnic group in India were integrated into a religious complex around these deities, political or public. Patronage was often the basis for the spread of popular cults in India, like um, in Maharashtra, um, that Ganesh Puja is there, and in Bengal, Durga Puja. So these spreads popular cults in India. These are very important. These uh, this religion plays an important role in integration of India. Role of sadhus in India. In his work, Indian Sadhus, Gure examined a paradoxical nature of renunciation in India. In Indian culture, the sadhu or sannyasi is supposed to be detached from all caste norms and social conventions. Since the time of Shankaras, the 8th century reformer, Hindu society has been more or less guided by sadhus. These sadhus are not individual hermits. Most of them are organized into monastic order which have distinctive traditions. These sadhus are organized into monastic order and they have distinct tradition. Renunciation has been a constructive force in Hindu society, and Ghure considered in detail the different group of sadhus. Important among them were the Shaivite Dashnamis, literal meaning is 10 orders, and Vaishnavit Varghese. Both these groups had Nagas, that is militant, naked ascetics, which were ready to fight off those who threatened the Hindu religion. Indian art and architecture. Ghure was keenly interested in Indian art. The Indian temple were indigenous in inspiration. The Vedas, epics, and Purana provided them with popular themes. But Muslims was Persians or Arabic and had no roots in soil as per Ghure. Ghure traced the customs in India from the ancient to the present time. He drew upon Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain artistic work to illustrate the variation in customs over ages. So let me summarize it for you. G.S. Gure is known as the father of Indian sociology. G.S. Gure I'm sorry. G.S. Gure is known as the father of Indian sociology. He headed the Bombay University, Department of Sociology in Bombay University from 1934. The central idea the central idea of Gure is about the religion, about the caste, about the tradition, about the religious belief. He worked extensively on the sadhus, right? And he worked on the rural urbanization. He wrote extensively on the rural urbanization in India. He was awarded a PhD degree from the Cambridge University, or he earned his PhD degree from the Cambridge University, right? He was he worked with WHR River, Hudson, and Patrick Geddes. Patrick Geddes is the one who started who started sociology as an academics in India, right? And the most important work is about uh, um of Gure is about the caste system. That's all for today. Thank you very much. Namaskar.